What do you do if you're Canada, right? It's your best friend, the United States. You can't rely on them anymore. Do you go towards China? You know, they're a superpower, but I don't know. Maybe they're not the nicest people in the world. You just don't know. So what do you do? Took great interest in an op-ed in the Globe and Mail offering another solution. Peace argues that Canada should model a medieval alliance that would build a sophisticated market power leverage with these countries that could exercise, countries could exercise over global finance and trade. Let's go to Fen Osler Hampson. He's a professor of international affairs at Carleton University in Ottawa. Fen, welcome to the program.
Delighted to be with you.
I'm delighted to talk to you. Tell our listeners about how you get an idea to model a current-day alliance for Canada and like-minded peers after a medieval alliance.
Well, just to give you a bit of a history lesson, the Hanseatic League was a loose alliance of medieval trading states in the North and Baltic Sea area that in medieval times, we're talking 12th, 13th century, banded together to protect their commerce, defend themselves against bullying by the larger kingdoms of Denmark and England. They had no empire. They didn't have big armies. But what they were able to do was to coordinate their trade and financial relations so they could punish predatory behavior and stave off the big guys. The comparison is appropriate today because the big middle powers of the world, Canada, the UK, the countries of the European Union, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, we're in a similar position. Individually, we're vulnerable, but collectively, in terms of our combined market power, the capital that we have at our disposal, our technology, if we work together, we can actually use that to exercise leverage against the predatory actions of the United States and China, who are the big guys on the block.
So tell me, because, you know, all the countries you mentioned, the regions that you mentioned as well, you know, these are, you know, like-minded countries, other democracies like ours. Seems like we're already doing a bunch of stuff with these places. How do we turn it up a notch? How do we get it to the level that you think we should be at?
Well, you're absolutely right. Canada's beginning to do a lot more business with Europe, a lot more business with some of the big democracies in Asia. We're doing that through free trade agreements, the free trade agreement with Europe, the free trade agreement in the Pacific. But our idea here is to begin to think about how we can work together to impose two kinds of sanctions when the big guys start, wielding their tariff power against us, or in the case of China, that comes with military threats as well. So let's look at some basic numbers. Together, if we form such a league, we would control 30% of global domestic product. That's bigger than the United States and China individually. And in the case of China, if we coordinate our trade policies, when the Chinese start, bullying us around, we can say, look, we're going to restrict access to key markets for Chinese goods. Mm-hmm. That would hit China where it hurts. Its factories, its employment. What Beijing fears most is the risk of social rest. So, the point here is not, obviously to cripple China, but to say, we've got some coercive power here by denying you market access. In the case of the U.S., it's slightly different. Mm-hmm. The United States is now the biggest net debtor to the rest of the world. It owns the rest of the world. And by the way, most of it is owned to countries in our proposed Hanseatic League. We're
Yeah.
talking about some $27 trillion in net foreign debt. And of that, some of that is obviously held by private financial institutions, but by our calculation, about 12 trillion of it is held by central banks, by sovereign wealth funds, and there a coordinated shift in bond holdings, or even a coordinated change in risk assessments would immediately show up in higher borrowing costs for the United States and lead to a certain amount of market
Well,
turmoil in Wall Street,
well,
which
and there's some leverage there. With that in mind, let me just throw a couple of concerns before I have to let you go. Here's one
sure.
concern that I have, right, with this idea. If I look at GDP growth here, okay, what the argument is we should join with like-minded countries, but they're also like-minded in the sense that they're economic basket cases right now. I'm looking at 2025 GDP growth for the United States. Again, you look at different metrics, different numbers, you get different numbers, but it's 2 to 4 times higher than those countries that you're arguing we should team up with. Like United Kingdom, Japan. Some people are arguing those countries are in recession. European Union, 1% growth. Compare that to the United States at maybe 4% growth, 4.5% growth. So I just wonder, like on fighting back when you've got the U.S. that in a time where they're actively trying to reduce population, seeing that much GDP growth, if it's a bit of a lost cause on that end, if we're not going to also try and increase our wealth and growth at the same time, sometimes I feel the European Union wants nothing to do with growth.
Well, you're right in one sense that Europe is a slow growth economy. It's also subject to declining population, although the waves of immigration,
Yep.
particularly from the Middle East and Africa, have alleviated some of that pressure. But we shouldn't just be focusing on growth. Europe is a creditor to the United States, and the United States growth is dependent on the credit, the investment it gets from the rest of the world, right? Including ourselves. We're a major creditor to the United States, a major investor in their financial markets. And we benefit from that U.S. growth. Remember that, because
Yeah.
the interest that accrues from credits ends up, back in the vaults of the Bank of Canada or in the financial institutions that are making investments there. So we shouldn't just be focused on, production of goods and services. And at a time when, that growth in the United States, let's not kid ourselves, it's coming from Donald Trump juicing the American economy so that he can have a better chance of winning those congressional elections. It's not going to be sustainable over the long run, given the policies he's pursuing. That's true in the case of tariffs, for example. It's true in the case of federal spending. It's true in the case of the major tax cuts that he's introduced. It's a short-term sugar fix, but what has it done? They're borrowing more in order to finance that growth. You got to have the investment to finance the growth. So the point is here, we're in a situation of very high mutual economic interdependence. Donald Trump has weaponized trade policy through his tariffs. We have a lever to potentially weaponize credit policy by saying we're going to start looking at our U.S. bond holdings because we're worried about the way you're managing the economy. And by the way, that was what got Donald Trump to step back from an invasion of Greenland, because one of the big pension funds in Denmark started offloading U.S. Treasury
Treasury.
bills,
Yeah.
and that made the stock market very nervous. And those people went to Trump and said, "Hey, wait a minute, right? you better back off on this because you're going to create an economic crisis with your ambitions to steal that block of ice in the mid-Atlantic.
Fen, I'll direct all of our listeners to go check out your piece. You and Tim Sargent writing it. They want to learn more about that leverage and what Canada can do. It's on the Globe and Mail website. It's called How Canada and Allies Can Stand Up to Trump and Other Great Power Bullies. Be well, Fen. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Fen Osler Hampson, a professor of international affairs at Carleton University.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.